Groku, the little green Liberator Mando and Groku landed the Razor Crest on the industrial moon of Aurelia. The sky filled with orange smog and distant conveyor belts humming incessantly. Groku peeked from his satchel, ears twitching nervously as Mando scanned the sprawling factory complex below with his visor. Reports had indicated a trapped stormtrooper, one who had secretly aided civilians, and Mando had promised to help, though the thought of stormtroopers in need always made him uneasy. They crept through the shadowed corridors of the abandoned factory, footsteps echoing against metal walls while Groku floated small tools and debris silently out of the way. The stormtrooper, designated TK-449, was rumored to have hidden civilians from Imperial patrols, and his current captors considered him a traitor, chaining him in a dimly lit storage chamber surrounded by automated sentries. Mando studied the patrol patterns and whispered to Groku, instructing him to float silently ahead and disable the nearest turret while Mando prepared a small distraction. Groku's tiny hand glowed as he levitated the turret's power core, sparking a short circuit that caused it to collapse with a quiet hiss, and Mando used the moment to dart into cover, firing precision shots to disable the remaining sentries without triggering alarms. TK-449 looked up, eyes wide with disbelief as a green hand gently floated the keys toward him, and he muttered a shaky thank you as Mando kicked open the chains and motioned him forward. Groku cooed softly, nudging the trooper gently toward the exit, clearly enjoying the thrill of the rescue while keeping watch for additional threats. As they navigated the maze of catwalks and conveyor belts, more automated drones appeared, scanning the corridor for movement, and Mando ducked behind a large mechanical arm while Groku sent the drones tumbling into crates using the Force. Sparks flew as machinery groaned and the sound echoed across the cavernous hall, but the duo moved with careful precision, TK-449 stumbling slightly but following the rhythm of Mando and Groku's pace. The factory lights flickered as they approached a large cargo bay, their escape route visible in the distance, and the stormtrooper muttered, "I didn't think anyone would come for me," glancing nervously at the floating green figure leading them. They reached the cargo bay just as Imperial reinforcements arrived, and Mando triggered a smoke grenade while Groku levitated metal barrels to roll toward the approaching soldiers, causing chaos without anyone being seriously harmed. TK-449 ducked instinctively as barrels smashed into walls, sparks flying, and Mando used the confusion to propel them toward the Razor Crest's landing ramp. Groku floated behind them, gently nudging the injured trooper forward while deflecting stray blaster bolts with tiny but precise pushes of the Force. Once aboard the Razor Crest, Mando lifted TK-449 into the co-pilot's seat, quickly checking his armor and offering rations while Groku floated nearby, cooing reassuringly. The stormtrooper looked around at the small green hand resting on the console and muttered, "I never imagined being saved by a child like him," and Mando adjusted the controls, guiding the ship out of the smog-filled sky and into the open void. They jumped to hyperspace, leaving the factory and the pursuing reinforcements far behind, and Mando finally exhaled, helmet lifting slightly as he glanced at Groku. The tiny Force wielder yawned and curled into his satchel, satisfied with the day's work, while TK-449 leaned back in the seat, still processing the unexpected kindness and bravery of those who had once been his enemies. Mando shook his head, muttering under his breath, "You two are impossible," but there was a note of pride in his tone as the stars stretched into lines of light around them. As the Razor Crest sped through hyperspace, the rescued stormtrooper began sharing quiet details about other prisoners and civilians still trapped in Imperial facilities, and Mando listened intently, realizing that even in the darkest places, small acts of courage could create hope. Groku floated a tiny hand toward the co-pilot's console, nudging it slightly as if to say, "We can help them too," and Mando allowed a small grin under his helmet, knowing that no matter the danger, the two of them made an unstoppable team. The stars streaked past, silent witnesses to the quiet heroism aboard the ship, and in the cabin a Mandalorian, a small green child, and a redeemed soldier shared a rare moment of peace in a galaxy that was anything but calm. The rescued trooper, TK-449, finally spoke again, voice steady but filled with awe. "I'll never forget this. I owe you my life," and Groku cooed softly, as if acknowledging the words, while Mando's hand rested briefly on the controls, thinking of the countless others they could save if they kept moving. The Razor Crest's engines hummed as hyperspace stretched around them, carrying the trio toward new adventures, uncertain challenges, and the hope that even the smallest heroes could make a difference. Mando glanced at Groku, then at the trooper, and finally at the endless stars ahead, and he said simply, "We'll keep fighting, together," while Groku cooed in agreement, tiny hand reaching toward Mando's armor, and the ship soared onward, leaving danger behind but carrying the promise of courage, loyalty, and the strange, powerful bond between a Mandalorian, a tiny green Force wielder, and a redeemed soldier. Groku, the little green Liberator, new mission weeks after the rescue of TK-449. Mando, Groku, and the redeemed trooper traveled through the outer rim aboard the Razor Crest, stars streaking past as the ship cut through hyperspace. TK-449 leaned forward from the co-pilot seat, voice low and urgent, describing secret Imperial facilities rumored to contain enslaved civilians and ongoing experiments to create Force-sensitive soldiers. Groku cooed softly, ears twitching as he floated small tools in the air, sensing the darkness ahead and ready to help in any way he could. Mando adjusted his armor and tapped the controls, scanning for patrols and sensors, eyes narrowing beneath the visor. "You sure these reports are accurate?" he asked, and TK-449 nodded firmly, emphasizing that time was critical and that any delay could cost innocent lives. The landing was rough, sand kicking up in thick clouds, and Mando guided the ship to a narrow canyon, barely wide enough for the Razor Crest to fit. Patrol droids skittered along the cliffs above, scanning for movement, and Mando whispered instructions to TK-449, telling him to cover one flank while Groku would scout ahead with the Force. Groku floated silently through the canyon, eyes glowing faintly, and the stormtrooper followed closely, amazed at the tiny green figure's skill in detecting traps and hidden sensors. They reached a jagged ridge overlooking a high-walled Imperial compound, the center pulsing with strange energy. TK-449 explained that the facility was holding dozens of civilians, some of whom had been subjected to experimental procedures designed to control their minds. Mando studied the layout, noting the patrol patterns, turrets and energy barriers, and he motioned for Groku to disable the outer sensors with subtle pushes of the Force while he and the trooper prepared the breach. Groku's hand glowed faintly as he levitated small panels and wires, jamming the sensors one by one without triggering alarms, and Mando and TK-449 slipped through a side entrance, weapons ready but careful to avoid unnecessary confrontation. Inside, the corridors were cold and metallic, echoing their footsteps, with faint humming from containment chambers where terrified civilians huddled in the shadows. Groku floated ahead, gently nudging doors open and redirecting patrol drones into maintenance shafts, while Mando moved swiftly to neutralize the guards silently. At the central holding area, Mando and TK-449 discovered dozens of prisoners, some injured and weak, and Groku cooed softly, levitating supplies and medical packs toward them with the Force. Mando assigned the stormtrooper to guide the prisoners while he and Groku handled the remaining guards and sabotaged the control panels to disable the energy locks. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded, alarms blared briefly, and Groku used a small force push to send a group of guards tumbling harmlessly into padded containment zones, preventing harm while clearing their escape path. With the civilians free, Mando, TK-449, and Groku led the group through winding corridors toward a hidden landing bay where the Razor Crest awaited. Imperial reinforcements arrived at the perimeter, and Mando fired strategically to hold them off while Groku floated small crates and barrels as improvised barriers, protecting the escape route. The prisoners moved cautiously, guided by TK-449, as blaster fire ricocheted and dust filled the air, and the Razor Crest engines roared to life as they prepared for takeoff. The group sprinted to the ship just as the final wave of reinforcements arrived, and Mando piloted the Razor Crest with expert precision through the canyon while Groku levitated loose debris to slow the pursuit. Explosions rocked the perimeter as they lifted off, sand and smoke trailing behind, and TK-449 looked at Mando with awe, muttering, "I never imagined we'd actually pull it off." Groku cooed, resting in his satchel, tiny hand reaching out as if to reassure the rescued civilians that they were safe. Once clear of the planet's atmosphere, Mando guided the ship into hyperspace, leaving the Imperial facility in ruins and the enemy forces confused and disoriented. The rescued civilians gathered near the cockpit, their eyes wide with gratitude, while TK-449 began quietly coordinating with underground networks to relocate them to safe worlds. Mando glanced at Groku, who cooed softly and floated a tiny hand over the console, and he allowed himself a rare smile, knowing that their small team had made a significant difference. As stars stretched into lines of light outside the viewport, Mando spoke calmly. "We'll keep moving, find the others, and make sure the Empire doesn't get another chance." Groku cooed in agreement, ears twitching, and TK-449 nodded firmly, realizing that the Mandalorian and his tiny companion were more than allies. They were a force that even the Empire had to respect. The Razor Crest continued through hyperspace, carrying its small but powerful crew toward the next adventure, leaving hope and liberation in their wake.